We will go ahead and get started. Welcome back to those of you who were able to join in last week when we did a bit of an overview about the building blocks framework. And welcome to those of you who were able to watch that recording and jump on and join us live today. Today, we are doing our first deep dive where we will be talking about curriculum modifications and adaptations. And my name is Carrie Kennegeiser. I am the Program Director of SCIPI, or South Carolina Partnerships for Inclusion. And I'm also joined by my partner in crime here.
You probably want me to say Dr. Kate Aceta. Hello, it's me. I hope you all are well. Welcome to the newcomers and welcome back to those of you who are joining us. These headphones always make me feel like I am on a podcast, which is fun for me.
Thanks, Kate. We all know that you aspire to be a podcast superstar, and you definitely have the skill set. So if there's anyone watching this webinar that wants to help Dr. Aceta with podcasts, feel free to put that in the chat and let us know.
Please do. I think I could be really good at it. Maybe I don't have the voice for it, but I have the personality for podcasting.
So last week, we talked about what preschool inclusion means. We discussed the 4 components of the building blocks framework, and we began exploring the steps for planning and implementing this framework. And today, like I said, we're doing our first deep dive. So today we will explain the when and the why we use curriculum modifications and adaptations. We'll describe the 8 types of curriculum modifications and adaptations, and we'll go over some examples. And then we'll take a little bit of time to allow you to identify some curriculum modifications and adaptations yourselves. And then, as always, we'll have some time for questions. So, as a reminder, the successful inclusion of young children is really based on the assumption that early childhood settings are already high quality, right? We talked about this last week, that they're places where young children are provided with that warm and responsive teaching and where their developmental needs are met. So, if after you have assessed and improved that foundation of your program, you still have a kiddo or maybe a couple kiddos who are having a difficulty really accessing and participating in those class-wide activities, then it is essential to make modifications or adaptations to your classroom setting or curriculum. So here's that framework again. So focusing on curriculum modifications and adaptations, that's that second block in our framework. And these are changes to the ongoing classroom activities or materials that really facilitate or maximize the child's participation in the planned activities and routines. And when do we do this? Well, we really need to ask ourselves, well, is the child interested in this activity, but maybe they can't engage or fully participate? And this might be where we see a kiddo who is kind of watching off to the side, or maybe they get to circle or some other whole group activity, and they're kind of there for a little bit, but then they really can't stay engaged and be part of the whole group. So we're really thinking about what's happening, and are there things that we can do to just modify or change that curriculum or that environment so that the kiddos can engage and fully participate. And I'm going to pass it to Kate to share some of these examples of curriculum modifications within the different types.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Carrie. So we are going to go through the 8. Some are modifications, so those are changes or like adaptations or accommodations or changes to the physical environment, where some of these are going to be modifications, which will be changes to the content or skills that the children are expected to master. So environmental versus the skills we're looking for them to master or demonstrate. So first, we're going to think about environmental support. Oh, this is a good thing to keep in mind. Many of these you already do. And as we're going through, we're going to stop and take sort of a ask the crowd about what are some of the things you've already done, mainly not because we're trying to say, are you not doing them, but rather to highlight how many of these you already do. Or you may have done in the past, and as a reminder to yourselves to say, let's do it planfully and purposely for specific children throughout the day. Also, Carrie, please just jump in at any point. Okay, cool. So environmental support. This is where we want to think about altering the physical, social, and temporal environment. So the timing to promote participation and engagement. Temporal, maybe you shorten that circle time. You have a friend that you know is really working on circle time, or you've got 3, and you know that when you get to because you've taken really good data, you know that when it gets to about 15 minutes, Garrett starts to lose it. So you dismiss the kids at the 10-minute mark so that Garrett can feel successful, and you can build up opportunities for him to be able to participate longer. You'll build up his tolerance to that. You might also think, and you see like the last picture here with the curtains, I'm pointing, but just know that I'm pointing to the curtains. That is so simple and so easy. I'm confident that many of you already do this. And if you aren't, and you have a circle time or a large group activity where you've got kids with their hands in the bins of all the things, because it always seems to me that like blocks are surrounding or trucks are surrounding the circle or large group area. And that can be really visually distracting to a lot of kids. Boop, just put a little curtain over that. Super simple, very cheap, easy to do. The bell is represents a transitional cue. This is a reminder, and you're going to say, Kate, I already do that. I know you do. Now we're going to make sure that we do it. And when we do it, that the kid we're thinking about is going to hear it and see it. So you might even pair that bell with a visual or a gentle tap on the shoulder just to remind them and have them repeat back, oh, we've got 3 more minutes. Okay, gotcha. 2 more minutes till we clean up. So I'm going to say to you, how have you altered the physical environments in your classrooms? And how have you changed your classroom environment to support peer interaction? What do you think? Feel free to jump in the chat, I believe. Right, Carrie, is that what you were thinking?
Yeah, that's perfect.
Great. What are some things you all are doing? Curtain everything. Ooh, visual timers. Oh, I love those. Yeah, like a sand timer, the ones with the little clocks. Label bins. Yes. Yes, yes, yes. And Kimberly, I'm confident that you're using both picture and word. So helpful, especially for our pre-readers, right? We want to make sure that they know what's expected there. Oh, turn off or turn down lights. Absolutely. Yeah. Give that pre-warning that a transition is going to happen. Light covers. Chairs instead of sitting on the floor. Clap, clap, clap. Yes, please. Yes, please. Can we can we say to ourselves that sitting on the floor doesn't work for all kids? It's too hard, especially our friends who are working to build up their muscle tone. If all of your energy is focused on keeping your body physically upright and together, you have heard none of the days of the week. You're thinking nothing about weather, and you certainly aren't participating in the patterns on calendar time, right? We just haven't heard that. So really making sure that we're giving opportunities for kids to feel successful by doing something as simple as using a chair. My kids always had options, chair or floor. You can pick. Yeah. Oh, I love that, Kimberly. Look who's sitting by each other. Set them up for success. Absolutely. Yeah, beautiful. Carrie, any other thoughts?
No, these are excellent. I really love the participation. Thanks for sharing. And we'll provide lots of opportunities throughout this session for you all to share with everyone the various modifications and adaptations that you're using.
Yeah, love that. All right. Oh, this next. I just moved over on my slides, but that's not going to help you. Great. Material adaptation. These are modifying the materials so children can participate as independently as possible. So that could be something as simple as, are the chairs and tables an appropriate height for the kids in your class? Which seems simple, except sometimes the chairs are too tall. So maybe you just simply need one of those little blocks wrapped around the front of a little chair so that their feet can be on the floor and so that they feel really grounded when they're getting ready to sit. So we don't see them leaning forward, wiggling everywhere, trying to sort of find where their body is in space. Great. We might also think, can they reach the easel? So is the easel too high? Can they access those art materials? Perfect. Can we, and then what do we think about the trike? Right here, we've got those pedals. So simple. We can put those also, if you don't have access to those fancy ones right there, you can duct tape wood blocks like I used to. It's not real fancy, but it definitely works and meets those needs for kids who need a little bit more assistance to reach those pedals, but maybe don't need their feet strapped in the same way other kids might. Sort of depends again on the individual child need. Paintbrushes. So we see those sort of like thicker end ones for our friends with more of a palmar grasp as they're working towards that pincer. And we can think about making sure that they're able to, because if the hard part is in their hand, we're probably not seeing that bilateral movement where we're going to see that cross body that we're going to want to see to build up those nice, strong shoulder muscles so we can get ready to read and write, which is so important to so many young children. So we can make sure they're feeling nice and strong. Or even taping paper down. Oh, I think this falls into some other one, but this is one that I was thinking about here. Just really thinking about where and how to keep, materials in one spot. So that part doesn't feel quite so frustrating and means a kid starts to avoid a particular area or topic. What about yourself? How have you altered or adapted materials to increase child's engagement and independence in your classroom?
And they already beat you to it, Kate. They're starting to
I know they're on top of it
in the chat.
Oh yeah, slant board, small broken crayons. Yeah, don't throw those crayons away. Those are great. Really help to increase that fine motor. Get them ready. Built a bench in front of my board so they can all reach. Oh yeah. Great ideas. Chunk crayons. Yeah. And a lot of these you'll note all kids can use. So it might enhance and foster the engagement of one or two particular kids, but all children can utilize these materials. Very rarely are they just for one kid, which is really nice, especially with 3, 4, and 5-year-olds when we're trying to explain who gets to use what. Yeah, sometimes things are going to be special for Timmy or for Alejandra, but sometimes they just work for all kids. And it's nice to be able to have those options out. Okay. Oh, pencil grips. Yeah, and adaptive scissors. Oh, we'll talk about adaptive scissors in a few minutes. Using big books. Yep. Awesome. Okay, that's my next one. It's like you read my mind. You knew what was happening next. So this is special equipment. These are adaptive devices that allow your child to participate. So they're specifically designed and pre-made for you in order to support. This peas and carrot bowl makes me giggle because what 3 to 4-year-old is like, oh yes, this is what I'm hoping for my lunchtime. I mean, who knows? Maybe they love peas and carrots, but I feel like I can tell by the cut of the carrot that that's a frozen carrot. And I think that's not going to taste very good. But the main thing we want to focus on, the 2 pieces there, it's suction cup, and you see the high lip to really promote that scooping. and really increase the likelihood that they're going to feel more successful as they're learning to use those scoops and learning to be able to self-feed. It's really hard to be independent if the materials that we have are making us feel frustrated. We're less likely to want to engage and to be able to participate. So one thing you might have is these squeeze scissors that we see right here in the first circle. That really promotes and increases the likelihood that a child who maybe they're at the squeeze, they don't have the finger dexterity yet, they're developing that, will still allow them to be a part of that fine motor activity because it's their fine motor skills that they're currently working on right now. They'll get to the scissors where they put their little fingers in, but we're not quite there yet. And this is a great place to start. Also, it works on that good hand grip strength, which is so important for all these later developments, not just handwriting, but all things, zippers, that kind of stuff, that sort of fine motor skill. We also have an adaptive chair sort of up in the corner. This is a Riften chair. This is a particular kind of Riften chair that has the little horse piece. I think I forget the exact term, but it's something along that lines, that little green nub down there that sort of keeps the legs in place, not restriction, but rather proper alignment. So the child's body isn't having to work. Pummel, thank you so much. I was in the same realm of horse, but not exactly. A pommel horse, that's why I thought horse. Thank you very much, Elizabeth. So that gives her the opportunity to, one, practice standing and to be able to engage with materials at a higher level. Also, like art materials, things of that nature, just increases her strength and ability to utilize those materials. And for children, young children with low tone might really benefit from having these. And you might be saying to yourself, where do I get these sorts of things? Carrie and I can provide some resources about where you might be able to access those, particularly if your program does not have an adaptive equipment specialist or provider regularly. There's ways to be able to make sure that children get the type of adaptive equipment that they would need in order to be able to be more independent and increase their level of participation there. What's some of the special equipment that you use in your classroom to help kids participate more fully? Oh yeah, voice output buttons. When I was a teacher, we called them jelly beans. Those big buttons. I don't know that they use them. Light tables, yeah. For visual perception, absolutely, really highlight and contrast things. We had gait trainers, a lot of Riften chairs in my classrooms. I can think of a particular spoon that had a bendable handle that you could wrap around the participants, the child's hand. So it helped support the scooping. A communication device, absolutely. Carrie, any others you can think of that you used regularly in your classroom?
Not off the top of my head. I think the ones that we've already talked about. The scissors.
Yeah, stander. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, if you think of others, let me know. All right. So let's take a look. Making sure I have little things right here. Great, great, great. So activity simplification. Oh, I'm like getting so excited. This is like a task analysis. What are the pieces you need? So this is simply breaking down a more complicated task into smaller parts, or even reducing the number of steps. So why do we want to reduce this? It reinforces children's efforts and they feel less frustrated while still being meaningfully engaged. You can think about this. This is great for if you think about your transition routine and you have kids go from circle to line up for bathroom to wash hands, back to circle to the table. That's a lot. Is there a way you can simplify that so a child gets frustrated or feels has difficulty following multi-step directions? Can you cut out some of those pieces in order to support that kind of independence in reducing those steps? Great ways to do this. First, then charts. Oh, who does not love that? Lucy, you're like reading my mind. I love backwards chaining. I feel like it's very underutilized. Um, I wish people would do it more often. Step-by-step process for washing hands, those kinds of things. You can also, it's great for play or play sequencing. You can see here in the middle part where we see dress the baby, wash the baby, dry the baby. If you're teaching or encouraging play schemes. So what are some different ways that we can engage with materials? This is a really lovely way to be able to do that. And as you introduce those different ones, you can even leave them out in the play area so that kids can have access to them for ideas, or you can use them as prompts, which we'll talk about that in a few minutes when we, in 2 slides when we get to adult support, but the kind of prompts that you might use in order to encourage this. Rarely are you just going to sort of just like give the first then board and be like, you got this, Tad, I'll be right back. We're going to have to do some teaching and some modeling in there about how to utilize these. So this is sort of our starting point, and then we're going to do the teaching part of that. Reducing number of the steps. When you think about mealtime, all the food's right on the table. The kids are able to self-serve. This is great for kids who are learning to follow multiple step directions. I'm immediately transported back to when I was a Head Start teacher, and we did we all ate together. We did communal eating, like family style. And we would pass all the plates out, plus all the little cups out, and it gives kids an opportunity to participate, but the steps are removed, having to go and get one of everything by themselves. We passed all together, and it really allowed everybody to participate. Yeah, what are some things that, how have you simplified an activity to help more kids participate fully? What are some things that you all have done? Reduce the number of steps required. Yeah, absolutely. Use visuals with the whole class and then individual students. Yep. Mm-hmm. Yeah, especially those like on a little small keychain, be able to utilize those so kids have access to those. Feels really good to take something off the to-do list and then put it in the finished envelope at the end. Modeling. Mm-hmm. Sequence task boxes. Yep. Visuals for play routines. Oh, that's such a great point, Janet. It works great if you have subs or assistants to help prompt or encourage the kind of play that different kids are working on. Yeah. We used to have block photos of block designs the kids had made and it was called our block idea book. And they were just photographs of when a child had done a basic play structure, took a photograph, printed it out black and white, put it in our little laminated sleeves, and then kids could turn to, and we could support them in taking a look at different block structures that they might want to consider making if they were feeling stuck on ways to engage in the block area. Yeah, remove the super frustrating step. If you know that zipper is going to lead to tantruming, can we, while we're working on zippering, let's not derail the entire arrival process, but maybe I get it started and you finish just an inch, and then we sort of backwards chaining, and then we have all the way through to the end, reducing that stress. Absolutely. Yeah. Awesome. Carrie, any others that you used?
No, this is great. You guys are covering a lot of great stuff.
And if you haven't used visuals to break a task down into smaller steps, please consider doing that. It is so helpful, not just for the beginning of the year, but really all around, and extra great for, I forget who it was, I think it was Janet who mentioned about subs. If you have those visuals, those kids will be able to tell you very quickly what's expected when you have a good visual schedule. And just also visuals throughout the routines of hand washing, mealtime, any of those types of things that you can be able to focus on. All right. I think we're doing okay on time, I think, so far.
I think so.
Okay. Oh, child preferences. So this is about integrating child preferences into a non-preferred activity. I'm going to lead with the painting over there. It's actually just talking to Carrie about this. I was thinking back to this particular child. So there was a little boy who I taught who was really struggling to engage in art. He was very avoidant and made it very clear that that was nothing that he wanted to participate in. And we realized after some good, strong observation and some discussion and knowing him well, that he didn't come to art because he didn't like to get his hands messy. He didn't like the feeling. So separately, we're working on the feeling and being able to tolerate different textures on the hands. But more important to me, it was I wanted him to be a part of the larger group and to be able to come to these activities not feeling quite so stressed out. So we put gloves on him. Anybody could wear gloves. You just put those little lunch lady gloves on. And he joined. He began to participate almost immediately in all art projects because his hands no longer got dirty. And that was really important to him. It was very stressful, and a lot of anxiety was produced around those types of things. And it was trickling into the rest of his day. It took him a long time to recover from feeling upset by that. And so we worked on that. So that was a super simple modification, not expensive, not challenging, very easy. And the option was in my class, anybody could wear gloves at any point during the art activities. Anybody. He picked gloves all the time, but other kids wanted to pick a glove here or there, one glove off, one glove on, really didn't matter. But it really allowed him to feel empowered and safe in engaging with new materials that felt unpredictable to him. The second thing that we did for him is for his preferences, which is the cars here, he loved cars. And if he could have, he would have spent all day in the block area, building roads, playing with cars. Now I knew this about him. So I went down and I bought some really inexpensive little cars like this. And I thought to myself, I'm going to encourage him to paint with cars, not just him, but all kids. So then we set out all this big, huge paper on the floor, and he got to roll around with his gloves on, dip his cars into the paint, and he really got into making tracks. Then we'd put them in a box and he could roll them back and forth so we could practice with no gloves because he didn't need to touch them, because he could just roll the box back and forth and the cars would roll back and forth. Same thing, we used to do acorn art, put the acorns in the little paint, use a tongue to pull them out, drop them in, those kinds of things. That really motivated him and got him more and more into the arts. Did we move beyond cars? You better believe it. But we started with something that was going to hook him in, that was going to get him feeling comfortable and excited about participating in something that made him feel stressed out and that he was really avoidant. And so we got him to the table, and that was the point. We wanted him to be a part of the group, and that was a great way to get him there. When we see this other little one, this little friend with a monkey, some kids do really well with a transitional object to get from point A to point B. It provides comfort, it provides stability, it gives them something to do with their hands often. And it can be something as large as a stuffed animal like this little kid, or it can be something as small as one of those little squishy balls that's pretty small and fits into the palm of their hand. Again, this all comes with teaching. If you have a transitional object, you set up really clear expectations with when it gets used and how it gets used, where it goes when it's done, where it lives, basically, and making sure that the child feels really successful in understanding how the object is used. I know that sometimes is a concern about, like, well, if we let them use it, what will happen then? Things will happen, and we can teach them how to be successful with these transitional objects, especially if the goal is to increase the likelihood that they're going to transition with success and feel like a part of the classroom, a genuine part of the classroom. So what are some ways that you've used child preference to engage kids in a non-preferred activity?
And Evelyn, I saw that you had your hand raised and then put it down. I'm not sure if you had a question for us or you had an example or thought, but you can feel free to put that in the chat.
Letting a child hold a preferred item during circle time. Yeah. Oh, we've all been there. We've all been there. Yeah, like something as if like letting them hold the preferred item, particularly if you know that circle time is stressful for the child or they have difficulty attending. Yep. And carry preferred to other activities. Yep. From center to center. It can come with you.
Yeah, why not?
Yeah.
And I think Kimberly said that she had moved some materials to the block area to kind of make it more enticing for some of her little girls that weren't going in the block area. I think that's a great idea. We can move some materials to different centers or areas if we know it's going to help children engage in that area or activity.
Yes. Oh, yeah. So first then with preferred objects. So reminding students that first we're going to complete this, then we get to go do this preferred activity. That's where the parachute comes in. We're going to do circle time, maybe not somebody's favorite activity because it's hard to stay focused and stay seated and mind our hands to ourselves. But then we're going to do parachute at circle time. So we're going to be able to encourage them to be able to be paired with a non-preferential item or non-preferential preferred activity. Awesome. Thank you, Tanya. All right. I think I'm ready.
Okay.
Okay. Adult support. So adult support is when an adult intervenes to support the child's participation. Exactly what it sounds like. And this can look a lot of different ways. Can be prompts, thinking about the prompting hierarchy. So going from most to least or least to most prompts, sort of depending on where the child is in their skill acquisition. Assistance, and then modeling behaviors of what would be expected there. And this is where the adult is going to do the supports. We're going to talk about peer supports in the next one. This is really the adult is going to be modeling those. So there might be verbal or physical prompts. So gentle touch prompt at the elbow to reach out and grab the material or take the coat off. Oh, remember, time to get your coat. Boop, gentle touch prompt at the elbow. Something related to that. Physical assistance, this might be hand over hand. Again, we always want to, when we're doing full physical prompts, like hand over hand, that we are moving slowly, carefully, and we are explaining to the child what we're doing so they are aware of this. We would never want to do, I'm sure none of you would, but just a reminder that we would never want to do full physical assist or hand over hand when a child's in a full-blown tantrum or an upset moment. This can be further arousing to the child and be difficult for them to be able to learn the thing we were hoping. We want to be able to use these when they're in a calm state, and that's when learning is best going to happen. Modeling expected behavior during activities. What should we all be doing? This is another reason, hopefully, that people get to eat with their kids, because this is a great opportunity to be able to model how you would use a fork or how you might serve and scoop out of the larger bowl or whatever it happens to be. Model hand washing, all those kinds of things. My toddler regularly reminds me, I promise I do wash my hands regularly, but he is eagle-eyed for how often I wash them. Good job, Mimi, remembering to wash your hands. Thank you, 2-year-old, for reminding me. And some of these can be, things if you're at the Play-Doh table, you see this teacher right here. That's a lot of toys out there. That might be too many toys to focus on. If you have a child who's sort of just looking at the Play-Doh, unsure of what the entry point would be, feeling overwhelmed by the array of options, pick one, maybe two items, and then give them the exact same item and do the roller together, do the cookie cutter together, do pokes together, really sort of keep it simple and model for the child. Another piece is that's really reinforcing when you see is the other piece is positive supports. So making sure that you're reinforcing what you see when you see it. We want to be able to catch them, right? Catch them doing the things that we would expect to be really encouraged that. If you know you have a kid that typically avoids touching the Play-Doh and you see some pokes, coming up and gently mentioning like, wow, also note your kid. Some kids love the big, other kids, hard pass, do not want to be celebrated like that. Know your kid and celebrate at the level that they feel good about. But to be able to point out those kinds of things when you see them working on the skills that you know that you're encouraging and on their IEP or IFSP goals. So really thinking about that and being able to keep an eye on those kinds of things and really be able to encourage them. If there's if they're maybe avoidant of the puzzle table or a certain center activity and you see them go over there, that's a great way to go over and be able to verbally support them. Like, oh, I see you're here. Is there something that you'd like to pick out? Maybe we could do it together. I would love to play with you today, and really try and think of ways to be able to encourage and foster that. What are some types of adult support that you've provided to kids in your classroom or in the classrooms you work in? Yeah, so pair the prompting with student needs in given situation. So really thinking about the kind of prompt that the child would benefit from based on the current skill set. Mm-hmm. Is it a visual, verbal, maybe a physical prompt? Mm-hmm. Maybe a combination. There are types of adult supports. Guiding for a new activity, such as a sorting box. Yeah, what would that look like? How could we model that for a child? Absolutely. Model, model, model. Yeah. Carrie, what about yourself?
I mean, again, everyone's really covering it. I would get into the activities with kids, play with them, observe what they're doing, and then model. And like you mentioned, really make sure that you are providing that specific feedback and encouraging kids in whatever way works for them when they're actually doing the thing you're wanting them to do.
Yeah. That's sort of spontaneous, where they're sort of spontaneously doing it. I think also another big piece here, we don't really talk about this here, but later on, I think it's important. It's just a reminder of like, remember when to start to fade those prompts. We want to make sure that our young learners are not becoming too prompt reliant and making sure that we're always pairing any sort of visual prompt with a verbal prompt, if that's appropriate for the developmental level. Obviously, some children, a visual or verbal prompt would not be appropriate, depending on their current skill set, but making sure that we're pairing those prompts so we can start to fade. So eventually we can have the least intense prompt there, thinking of least to most. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Opportunities to practice. Yeah. It's really hard. Like even this Play-Doh one, which is so simple, if we're constantly putting out new, novel, novelty is great, but not if you're trying to target a specific skill. Opportunity to practice, rehearse, and repetition in a safe learning environment is so important. Yes, I love that you put in there immediate and specific. Yes. Avoid the good jobs. What on earth, how am I supposed to do that again? Someone tells me good job. How am I supposed to do good job again? I don't know what it looks like. Mm-hmm. So we really want to make sure that we're defining and being specific in what that is. so that our students can feel successful and understanding like, wow, look at the way you zipped up your coat like that. Woohoo. I'm like, oh, the zipping part, that was awesome. Okay, I'm going to try that again because that felt really good. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I love that. Helping children notice that someone else wants to play. It's sort of a social interpreter, if you will. Mm-hmm. A Sherpa. Yeah, awesome. Great stuff.
Yeah.
These are awesome. Great job, everybody. I'm loving all these examples. All the good stuff you all are doing in here, or even in this trend. Just kidding. You should be here, but you guys are already doing so much great stuff. All right, let's talk about peer support. Now, I always feel a little, I love peer support. I always tell my undergrads, caution with peer support in the sense of, are you supporting the peer? When we're asking a peer to be the support or the model here to encourage, make sure that they're one, that you're going to support the peer, and that the peers are a good fit. For example, if you have a super gregarious, chatty child and you have another child who you're working on having them engage in and develop their language skills, is it going to feel intimidating to put them next to me who's going to talk their ear off? Or is that something that the child would actually like and benefit from? Sometimes that can feel overwhelming. I thought, I can think back to a specific time where I had a little boy that I thought, oh, it's going to be great. I'm going to put him next to this other little friend at snack time because this other friend talks nonstop. And what I didn't take into mind at the time is that the student I was thinking of with the IEP had a language processing delay, a fairly significant one. So this peer is looking at him, talking, pointing out things, saying things. And the kid is just like, I can't process this fast enough. And then just sort of looked defeated. And so it didn't feel successful. So I am all about peer support, but I will say, as the adult in the room, think about the supports, one, you're going to give to the peer, and to be able to think about the match between the peers that you're setting them up and make sure that it's going to feel successful for everybody, and that it's really sort of purposeful and planned in that. I did actually just move him over like 3 seats and sat him next to another friend who was a little quieter, and they were actually a really good match. And I did some other things that made that child feel a little more successful linguistically in class. So those are some of the things we just want to think about, but can also be things like buddy activities or buddy areas, and really making sure that you are planning your buddy pairs, or even like a 3 kids or 4 kids, to really try and sort of like elicit those social interactions. We used to do group builds all the time, that there would be 3 kids paired together and they would have to build a piece with blocks all together. And they would have, that would be one of the centers, would be a group build that everybody needed to participate in, that kind of a thing, to sort of foster that. And we were really mindful of our pairings and our small groups, so that kids could sort of play off of one another. Carrie, what are some things you've thought about for peer support?
I think you've covered it all.
I'm giving too much. I'm going to hold back. Next slide. I'm going to say almost nothing. So my question to the audience, folks, attendees, how have you all used peer supports in your classrooms? And have you done it with a specific skill or activity, perhaps, that you found it to be really helpful? While you folks are typing, I actually thought of two more examples. Oh, perfect. Turn taking with one peer at a table and then moving to a center activity. Awesome. Yeah. Beautiful. So that one-on-one, and then being able to move it to like a center activity so that they might engage with a peer during it. Yeah. So be able to like practice one-on-one. That's great. I used buddies for transition a lot. If we had friends who sometimes struggled with what the sequence was in transition, you always have sort of tiny teachers in your room who know what all the transition pieces are. It's great to use during that time.
Mhm.
Yep, small group instruction. Oh, the snail pace game. Oh, I used to love that game. Yeah, I loved board games. We used to play them all the time with kids. I love those. Another one that I used a lot, mostly to foster peer interaction, was one of our jobs was the in my class, in my Head Start class, were the ushers, and that was a student who could help other kids find their seats at circle time. We had a visual seating chart that they used, and this provided opportunity for kids to be able to help a peer find their seat. So promote that social interaction and give them some leadership skills, which was really nice. Peer buddies for lining up in transitions. Awesome.
Mhm.
Yeah, and third graders using older peers also. Sometimes that can be really successful because they tend to be more patient, sometimes than same aged peers. So that can be really nice. Oh, Stephanie, I love that. I've never done that where you've had students who are more experienced versus less experienced, sort of newer, and using their AAC communication devices. Yeah, that's great.
Mhm.
What a great way to see them see another peer model, the use of that technology. Great for communication.
You guys are on it.
I know. Look at all this good stuff that's happening out in your classrooms. And lastly, you've made it. We're here. We're at number 8. So great work, everybody. We've made it to number 8, which are invisible supports. So this is really the purposeful arrangement of naturally occurring events within an activity. Here we have a little girl right here who perhaps is working on pouring, but we're going to set up the learning environment so that the pitcher is maybe only half or mostly empty by the time it gets to her, so that she can feel successful in pouring it with a smaller amount in there. That's a really simple arrangement in the classroom where you've thought purposefully. That's the big thing in all of these. Are we thinking about children's individual goals and then embedding them into the daily routine by making these small modifications or adaptations throughout the day? Purposeful arrangement. That's really critical. Or perhaps you have like this other little girl, you're working on counting, and or matching, if you had little placemats with what everybody needs at mealtime. So maybe you're going to have matching or counting, and you are going to say, okay, Alejandra, this week it's your turn to set the table for everybody at snack time. And so Alejandra's going to work on making sure that there's 4 plates, 4 cups, 4 bowls at the blue table. And that's going to be her task because she's working on one-to-one correspondence. And so she's going to focus on counting and one-to-one correspondence. And this is a great way that you can embed that into the daily routine. I'm trying to think if there's anything else that I would think about that. But yeah, I think it's a lot of those, like just the things you do before the activity and the day begin. That, like, how can I set up this learning environment such that I'm going to purposely get this one for me teeters on it teeters on the line of embedded learning opportunities that we're going to talk about next week. But it is really similar in sort of in those invisible supports, the things we do behind the scenes, thinking specifically about kids and their individual goals, and how we can provide them opportunities to practice throughout the day.
Yeah.
Anything that I missed there, Carrie?
No, and you kind of spoke to what I always think. It is very similar to an ELO. And it's nice for teachers to be thinking about, you're already doing this, so how can I say, oh, well, I know that Kate is working on X, so I'm going to make sure I ask Kate to do this particular thing. Or maybe I have a helper for different activities, but I know Carrie needs to be this helper because she's working on this particular skill and it aligns really well. So it just happens naturally to anybody that was maybe observing in the classroom or came in, or to your students. They don't realize that you're, being super intentional, but you are, and you've planned for it.
Yeah. How are you all perhaps doing these kinds of sort of invisible planned opportunities? Oh, I love that. Sort of like promoting, like, here's how you would do it. And you sort of you plant the leader in there of like, who's going to be able to model this successfully for other kids. Yeah, absolutely. And then you can be able to like celebrate a kid who's doing some great stuff.
Yeah.
I love that. While you were thinking, I can't stop myself. I'm just going to talk for just one more second while you sort of write in any other ideas, but I know we're getting to wrap up, so I'll talk very quickly. But I think a question that's come up for some of the other folks when I've talked about these is like, how do I organize this? And that's when we sort of go back to the activity matrix that we talked about last week, about thinking about the child and their skills. And so a big part of that is like really just sort of a big Excel sheet, even if that's what works best for you all, about your kids and your skills, and then thinking about what they're all working on, and really thinking about when during the day could we do these kinds of things, and what types of modifications might need to be made in order for the child. So a big part of that is planning, because it's great to do stuff on the fly. Awesome. But you all know, if you want to see sustained outcome change for young children, we have to be, as several of you said, practice, repetition, and we need to be planful. So thinking about those things before they even occur, and really trying to embed them into the daily routines. I think I'm good, Carrie.
Yeah, absolutely. So
Okay.
we'll do a couple examples and we'll see if you all can kind of name that modification. And these are pretty simple ones. Like Kate talked about, a lot of these are simple, they're free or cost effective, and they don't take a lot of time to really set up. So what about this one? What type of modification do you think this is? And you can use the chat. Yeah, we're using a visual. So when we're using visuals, we're thinking about setting up the environment to communicate what we want to do for kids. There's something else I was thinking about as well. I was also kind of pairing child's preferences, right? So if I know that Kate really hates transition, well, I'm planning this as part of our typical routine, that we can have a choice for how we transition. And again, maybe Kate doesn't get to choose what we're doing for the transition every time. We're taking turns, a different kiddo can choose this, but it allows for knowing what's going to happen, and it allows for some choice and some preference in how we do that transition. Yeah, thanks, Elizabeth. Exactly. And it's fun, right? I want to transition like I'm a cat, or I'm flying a kite, or I'm doing a frog jump. All right, what about this one. What am I showing here? Yep, it's a visual schedule. So I'm letting kids know what's happening, right? This is an environmental modification, and we should all have visual schedules. But particularly, I'm alerting them to the fact that, hey, guess what? It's raining today. And I'm going to talk about, we're going to look outside. We're going to talk about how it's raining. So we can't go outside today to play. We're going to do this other activity instead. So I'm alerting them to that change in their schedule by this environmental modification. Right, Elizabeth, what's missing from the schedule today? What about this one? Yeah, Lisa, right? Here's my peer buddy on the playground. Maybe he's helping me tie my shoe before we transition back inside. Maybe we're paired together and we were doing an activity and playing earlier. Yep, peer support. How about this one? Yep, I have another visual, so I'm being really clear about what's happening in the environment, but I'm also doing some activity simplification or task analysis for anyone who might need the support of knowing what exactly are the steps when I go to use the bathroom. What are my reminders? Because maybe it's overwhelming. I go into that restroom and then I don't know what to do. I forget what I need to do first or what happens when I'm finished. And the last one, and I really love this one. It's so simple, but it's powerful to me. What am I doing here? Oh, that's good. Yeah, that's true, Elizabeth, right? I'm thinking about just making sure the materials I have are appropriately sized for the kiddos in my room. Yeah, so Lisa, I'm doing an environmental cue, right? I'm helping them to know, A, how many people should be at the sand table, but also it's a cue for some where I need to stand, but with wiggle room, right? So those rectangles, that's generally where I'm gonna stand and where my space is when I'm at the sand table, but I don't have to be exactly in that spot, right? So there's some wiggle room, but then it's gonna help communicate where I need to be. Any questions on what Kate and I presented today? Next week, we will present some strategies for planning instruction using that child activity matrix that we mentioned, and we'll really focus on how to embed that planned instructional interaction to enhance children's learning and development. So those embedded learning opportunities, or ELOs. And if you have questions, feel free to connect with us. You can email me at skippy@mailbox.sc.edu. I'm going to launch a quick evaluation. If you would complete that, we appreciate feedback. And if you do have other things that you would like for us to address or questions, again, feel free to just shoot us an email so we know what you want to see. And next week, we'll be here same time, same place. I'm so glad you all enjoyed the session.
Thank you so much for attending. Yeah.
And your participation, you all just sharing what you're doing, thinking about the examples that you are living right now is really helpful. sometimes it's hard for me to go back in time and pull what I've done in the past. So I really appreciate you all just chiming in.